It should be recording. Tried the keyboard instead. Anyway, welcome. Well, I'm not supposed to say that. Yeah, anyway, another draft science video presentation. And so we have just about nothing in the comments. And so we'll comment on the nothing in the comments. Then we'll move on to something else. All right. Do you really know what you're talking about there? It is. So this is something, I don't know, old guy, super fragilistic thingy. Okay, it is. Doesn't make any sense at all. Just garbage as a screen name. Which, again, it's 3 words, so I should delete it just for that. But anyway, yeah, so nothing. There's no reasoning here. Nothing, just nothing. Just absolute useless nothing. All right, moving on. Gifted gesture. So what's the point? I mean, clown. Just saying I'm a clown. Okay, great. Why should I be interested? Oh, that's right, I'm not interested. Why don't you just rant at the camera in each video and stop answering comments? So, again, this is just such a lame excuse that somehow too many of my videos have too much excitement in them or something, when most of them are conversations about physics. This is just such a complaint. What's this complaint about? What does it even mean? Obviously, the videos have a variety of content. You can't just classify them all as the same thing because they're different. You can't even figure that out. Okay. It is clear. No, it won't be made clear. You won't provide any evidence of this clear. You are incapable of civilized conduct. So, like I said, every one of my videos is public. Never deleted any by my volition. And I've done plenty of interviews with plenty of people. And go ahead and point out where I was the rude guy. Go ahead. You can't do it. The uncivilized. Go ahead. Show it. Oh, that's right. You can't. You have no evidence of this. All right. Despite whining incessantly about trolls, etc. Am I whining incessantly? I'm reading your trolly comments. You're the ones, again, you're clearly controlling the medium, right? I mean, you clearly get to sit there and just distract the subject and change the subject on every video you go on. You just decide to bring up some kind of crap that has nothing to do with the video, just to ruin, okay, the process of having a conversation that goes somewhere. You're just destroyers. You're just toxic pieces of dirt. Anyway, and claiming it's also unfair. No, it's stupid. It's uncivilized. You use the word civilized. Well, you have to pay for civilization. Civilization just doesn't happen. It's a organization. It's a complexity. And complex things need to be kind of carefully handled, like radioactive elements, for example. You can't go smash them all together, do this, do that. You can't do anything you want to them. It's a little bit fragile. And civilization is a fragile thing, and nobody wants to create one and do all what's necessary to make one, which is to create mechanisms where this kind of behavior from other human beings is just not tolerated. Adults acting like children. You're a child. You're an idiot, you know, and a civilization wouldn't make you controller. You are constantly sneering and toxic. It's not true. And then wonder why you get toxicity in return. No, I don't wonder at all. I know why I'm getting crap in return is because you're all religious kooks. All right? You're fanatics. And like all the fanatics, the religious fanatics, you're really ignorant fanatics. Okay? It's like you haven't even challenged the other. You haven't even explored the other fanatic religions. You're just a fanatic. Mama told you so. Therefore, it's stuck way up your little ass. And you can't think. You have no capacity to do any critical thinking. You're also rude, obnoxious, and frankly rather unappealing. And same to you. I'm rubber, you're glue. You know, there's nothing appealing about some idiot dressed in a jester suit, frankly. Sorry, unless you're really gay or something. What the fuck do I want you for? I don't want a fucking anal dildo. So, fuck you. Anyway, change your shirt. Why? I wear a shirt, I don't wear a shirt. You're the ones complaining incessantly. This is an incessantly sissy complaint. What I'm wearing or how my comb, whether I shaved. You're just such sissies. Go outside and get laid. Well, I wish it was that easy. You just go outside and it happens. But regardless, I mean, this isn't more. I mean, frankly, it's childish advice. As if somehow this is a cure for anything. Like, what adult thinks that cures anything? Oh yeah, that cured me. I'm fine now. I won't need to get laid again tomorrow. I mean, it just doesn't mean anything. It's just such meaningless mush. You mean go get tired and take a nap and don't bother doing anything with your life? Oh, like you. All right, it might mellow you out. So really, you went to school to figure that out? That's somewhere, it should be written in a medical book somewhere. Oh yeah, if you're not mellow enough, you need to get laid more because that'll just mellow you out. Do you have any evidence, statistics, anything? No, of course not. As you seem far too old for this petulant 16-year-old. Nobody gets me, Shroud. You are so fond of portraying. So again, I don't see it. Frankly, if that's the description you're going to make, then why don't you back it up with something? Like, let's have some clips of the 16-year-old. Whatever that would be. You're the one dressed in the silly suit. I mean, you can't, the fact that you can't even see the irony of this. Like, who else but a 16-year-old? No, a 12-year-old. I don't even know I don't even know if anybody dresses up as a court jester anymore on Earth, even on Halloween. It's such an uninteresting character. You must be so proud. Also, your theory of everything is laughable. And you demonstrate that with what fact? What, not even a fact, what sentence? What logic? What anything? No, nothing at all. You're just saying from your professional opinion as a gesture, doing gesture physics, from the perspective of a gesture physicist, it's laughable. Well, it should be from that perspective. It's like the work of a slightly retarded child. Great. I mean, the great thing would be is if you'd wish to put your name on any of this, so you'd be accountable. Because when I'm proven right, I want to laugh at you so hard. I mean, I just want to sit with like a video camera of you where people just keep telling you, oh man, you had that so fucking wrong. You're such a stupid cunt. And they could just say it to you, and I could just watch you have to do something like make some excuse for why you were an asshole. Oh, you were such a fool, such a dupe, such a silly asswipe. I'd really enjoy that. So maybe I can make it happen. I mean, once you're Einstein famous, I'm sure if you go call up Google, to do lunch, you can have a little conversation. Hey, come on, you can give me the name of that scumbag, can't you? I need a laugh. It'll be so much fun. He's far too old for anything. It is. That doesn't make anything. The 16-year-old, it is. This sentence doesn't mean anything. He's far too old for anything 16-year-old. I guess he should just put a little ... and then do his it is. So this is a retard who has to put it is after everything. That's his shtick. And he's commentating on other people. I mean, the world really is still a silly fucking place. I mean, I'm even saying silly when I'm arguing with a court jester. I mean, you just can't get irony like this. You have to go to Earth to find this kind of irony. It's so deep and preposterous. So, that was it for the comments. Really brilliant. No accounts. I mean, they literally have no account. They're literally have no account. This channel does not have any content. Obviously. 4 subscribers, no content, playlists with deleted videos in them. Yeah. See, in a civilization, you just wouldn't have to waste time on it. Now, obviously, the policy should be something like just delete all the crap. Just block them, delete them, that's it. Crappy comment, block it, delete it. Just wait for somebody who can put, sentences together that actually has some kind of content relevant to physics in it. without the personal bullshit, from their unaccountable positions. Like I said, if you get a lot more latitude if you actually have a channel where you actually have content, you have some reputation to protect. You get a lot more latitude. But when you're risking nothing, you have no rights. You really don't. You have to earn a right. That's another thing civilization has to kind of understand. Is that they have to be earned. Oh, shit. Anyway. So, nothing to say there. We've completed our task as far as I can tell, and so I'll move on to my agenda. Physics. Alright, so, the guy did point out that I should update the website, and I really should, because it really has advanced since the 2 years ago or more that I last did any work on it, it's probably longer than that on the subject of magnetism, actually. Anyway, but it all is this simple. I mean, it can be broken into this simple, one little, it's not even a page, it's not even a paragraph barely, of information that you need to kind of understand to get it. So instead of bent space, which has no energy to account for how it functions, they don't explain where the energy comes from to move galaxies and all this other crap. Their theory of magnetism just says virtual photon. It has no explanation for how it does attraction or repulsion, nothing. No physical mechanism that you could draw or show or illustrate in any way whatsoever. And then they have this whole particle zoo of particles that don't do anything as far as anybody can really account for. They don't really function in any way in atoms or in the atmosphere or any way whatsoever. They're just useless things that only exist in accelerators. Instead of that, all you need to understand is there's two kinds of force bit. Okay, there's whatever you want to call them, round and square, flat and whatever, not flat, tall and short, whatever. And they're really related to the two different kinds of matter bit, the electron and the proton. So it's the mechanism for charge. So the two kinds of force are what makes the two kinds of charge, dipole, north and south end of the magnet, if you want to look at it that way, makes it relevant, is that the force reacts differently. One force reacts differently than the other force to the different poles in an inverse way. That's all you really need to understand. Alright, so there's two kinds of force bit and there's two kinds of matter bit. So if we call the two pieces of matter that matter electron and proton, and we understand that the neutron is just an electron and a proton, composite particle, so we can ignore it for the purpose of the explanation. It obviously plays a role, but you don't need to understand that role to understand that the protons are in the middle of the atom and the electrons on the outside of the atom. Not very complicated. So you only have two kinds of matter, electron and proton. They're the two charges, the monopoles of magnetism, the north and the south, the plus and the minus and plus, really. Anyway, and the two kinds of matter bit, you can understand that the two kinds of force bit should be understood to be relevant to those two kinds of matter bit. They're the partners to them. So I could say they're black and red, but they're not black and red. They're really, one's an electron force and one is a proton force. So if you want to do that silly field stuff that they do, there's two fields. There's the field of the proton force and there's the field of the electron force, but there's no other fields of any other forces. There's just a bunch of these little bits, and they can only have two kinds of interaction. So I've used the analogy of a boat analogy in a sea, and the sea is basically full of rowers with no boat. So they're just rowing, swimming, rowing in a direction like a photon. They're just traveling straight lines. And sometimes if they're in a sequence, then they're a visible photon. But if they're not in a precise sequence, they're just rowers in the sea. And the electron and the proton are boats. And they can hop onto the boat. And when they hop onto the boat, somebody else has to get off the boat. So a rower is already on the boat. So electrons are already full of some force, and protons are already full of some force, some amount of rowers. And the rowers are just doing their own thing. They're just what they are. I row north, I row south, I row east, I row west. They just row in a direction. And so you just take on a rower in a direction. That means that you have another rower going in a certain direction. It means you might move in that direction because you now have an extra rower rowing in that direction. And so there's only these two kinds of interactions. They get on the boat and somebody gets off the boat, or they get on the boat, there's no room for them, and they get thrown back off the boat, okay, in a perpendicular direction. So they don't get thrown off the boat the way they came, or that, the forward, the way they're going, or the way they came. They get thrown off left, right, up, or down. Now I know up and down doesn't really work in the sea, but just pretend it's okay. Two-dimensional works as analogy only, and clearly it can be understood as 3 dimensions without too much difficulty. But anyway, it leaves in a perpendicular direction. So that's it, 2 reactions. A reflection, essentially, right? If I jump on and somebody else jumps off, that's going to look like a reflection. The rower who jumped off, we're all wearing the same suit. All the rowers look identical. So when one jumps off and the other one comes back, it looks like a reflection. But something really happened to the boat. Okay, the boat changed because now there's a rower going this way instead of a rower going that way. Obviously opposite directions. And so now the balance inside the boat is different. So you're changing the balance of the electron and the proton with this external field of swimmers, of rowers. And that's all that's happening in the universe. That's the 2 kinds of force. If you understand, there's 2 kinds of rower, the blue rowers, the red rowers. When a blue rower goes into a red boat, okay, he gets ejected perpendicularly. When a blue rower goes into a red boat, you get it. And vice versa. When a red rower goes into a red boat, he stays, and a guy going the opposite way gets out. All right, that's it. That's all that's happening in the sea of the universe. So in the smallest universe, the little bit universe, in the bit universe, the only universe there really is, that's all that's happening. There's nothing else happening. There's just rowers always moving they always row the same speed, the speed of light. And so you can understand that when they're in the boat, the only thing that changes how fast they're going is how many rowers are rowing the same direction as them. If they have to compensate for rowers rowing the opposite directions, they have to spread all of their rowing power over the whole boat now. Well, you can understand it from yourself, right? You can understand if I'm running and I'm just moving me, no problem. But if I have to pull 10 other people, I'm going to move a lot slower. So the matter bits move, the boats move a lot slower than the rowers move. And that's really all that happens in the universe. Gravity is just basically saying, take a bunch of rowers, that would have hit something, that are moving the speed of light, so they would have got here really fast. And instead, put them in a boat, move them really slow, so they don't get where they're going. And now where they were going, nobody jumps in the boat. So nobody compensates for the force coming the opposite way, so they end up having more rowers going one way than the other way, so the things move. And that's all gravity is. But this interaction is basically explains why magnets work. It explains that if you have a proton boat and an electron boat, and they're next to each other, close to each other, you have something called a dipole. In that the action on one end is exactly the opposite of the action on the other end, and you'll be able to sense that if you have 2 boats. If you have 2 boats and you bring them next to somebody else who has 2 boats tied to each other, you'll see the rowers coming out of the boat, and they'll always be the same kind of rower coming out because they're coming out perpendicularly. And they'll always be coming out the same color. So you'll end up with a bunch of red rowers on one side and blue rowers on the other side of your boat too, of your dipole. And your dipole will feel that in the sense that it'll take more on in one direction and it won't take on any in the other direction. So it's going to end up moving, twisting, turning towards the difference in the pressure. All right, so there's only the two kinds of interaction: reflection, which is an exchange, or you can, and absorption, which increases pressure. Probably should put a space in here. All right, probably put a space in here just to keep it all more understandable. So the reflection is an exchange, and absorption, which increases pressure. The diversion, that is the just pushing the guy out, saying no room in the boat, that movement to one of the other perpendicular dimensions. So it just moves, the diversion is just moving, taking a guy who's rowing this way, and now he's going to be rowing that way. He's still rowing a straight line, it's just you changed his course. And it decreases pressure, quite obviously, because now if there's two things facing each other, and all the rowers that jump out of your boat move out of his boat in a perpendicular direction, it's not coming back to you. But if he does send it back, then you send it back to him, and he sends it back to you. You're going to end up with a lot of rowers in between you two, and that's going to be more and more pressure, because each time they hit your boat, they jump in and another guy jumps out. Those interactions mean you're going to have a tendency to move in the direction of the new rower. You're going to either slow down in a counter direction, or you're going to move in the opposite direction. Alright, matter is pushed by force pressure, so you can just understand it as a pressure argument. It's just one interaction releases the pressure, and the other action multiplies the pressure by creating a perpetual reflection that can happen between two boats. Two red boats are sitting there. They're going to sit there and repel each other because the rowers that keep bouncing between them keep doing exactly the same thing. They keep jumping out and hitting me again, and then this one hits me again this way. And the hit means that I exchanged a rower. I exchanged momentum, and I exchanged momentum going this way for momentum going that way. So obviously I'm going to tend to go that way. And it explains why the pressure gets stronger and stronger. The closer and closer you get, the more interactions. At the speed, because the speed of the rower, the swimmers, is always the same. So if I only have one rower and he's going this distance, it's going to be boing, boing, boing. Very little pressure, but if I make it really close, it's going to be very, very high pressure. Lots of interactions, and lots of interactions that always have the implication of this boat going this way and this boat going this way. Nobody swimming this way jumps into this boat. It's just this way, one way. And every interaction means he's getting pushed this way. The balance is changing in one way, one direction. So there's just no way for it not to create almost infinite pressure when the two things get very close to each other. Alright, when a force bit is absorbed and causes matter to move, so it's a tricky thing to understand, but it's really an absorption. The rower jumps into the boat. The force is in the thing. So when some piece of matter is moving, it possesses rowers. Now, it doesn't necessarily possess more rowers. It just possesses a different percentage in one direction versus another direction. So it's exchanged. So the space shuttle, when it's moving, is exchanging. When the big giant flame is causing that exchange, in the sense that it's giving a bunch of stuff going that way, and it's getting a bunch of rowers the other way. Alright, and acceleration takes a little bit of time to get you up to speed, because that acceleration takes it requires the interactions, and you have to spread that interactions over all the atoms in the space shuttle. Alright, the implication is the force pressure does not get where it was going at the time it would have been there. So the cleanest explanation for gravity is just that, the simplest. It's obviously a little more complicated because gravitational bodies already have a whole bunch of rowers on them, a bunch of matter that's still moving, it's still doing the interactions. More rowers are going inside of me every second from one side than from the other side. I'm making more exchanges in one direction, and the ground has to do the opposite. It has to make more rowers coming the other way to stop me from going right to the center of the earth, and so that's what it does. But it's a constant tug of war. All right, so the important thing to understand is, it explains magnetism perfectly, and so you could almost argue gravity is magnetic, and that it has to do with these rowers and it has to do with electrons and protons. But the key for the Earth is that it doesn't have any real um, magnetic bias. It's a tiny magnetic field. So most of the atoms are, the magnets, are arranged in ways that balance out. There's just as many red to blue magnets in the Earth as there are blue to red ones, orientation wise. So the field is completely back to being mixed and neutral. There's no there's no polar bias. So it's not a magnetic function. It's not a magnetic effect, but it is a magnetic function in the sense that it's still polar objects. The monopoles are still doing the work. It's just that the monopoles are arranged randomly, quote unquote, and mixed. And the mixture means they've lost any orientation of being a bias, having a polar bias. And so it just works on the fact that there's this time delay thing, this idea that the force is moving the speed of light. You put something in the way that it has to jump into. The thing that you put it in the way moves slowly, or very slowly. And so this, that was going to be over here in 10 seconds, doesn't get over here for 50 years. It depends on how slowly this is moving. And clearly when it gets there, you'll see the force arrive. A whole bunch of stored force. So everything that has velocity clearly has stored force, because when it arrives, it makes a spectacular, force explosion, because it's got a ton of stored energy in it, stored force. So it ties together that simply. It's all so freaking simple, and it gets rid of all of this spooky action crap. It gets rid of this vague answers to the questions. It gets rid of the dualities, wave-particle crap. It gets rid of the duality of space-time versus virtual photon. Gets rid of all of this nonsense. Gives you a simple explanation of a mechanical process that's, again, so friggin' simple. And it will explain all phenomenon. There's no phenomenon that it can't explain that we see, a real physical fact. It will explain the facts. All right. And so all of Maxwell's equations are about dipole force versus monopole force. And so he just makes a distinction in the sense he calls one a B field and one an E field, when it's the same field. He's just talking about one created by the monopoles, that is the electrons and the protons, that's charge, no dipole, and the one created by the dipole, which is the two very close to each other that are creating a mixed force, a force that can be either or, depending on its orientation, and how much it's spinning and lots of other things. But that's all Maxwell's really describing, is the same force, one created by the monopoles, one created by the dipoles. Same stuff though, same red and black, if you want to use that. So the dipoles mix the red and black a little more. The monopoles, clearly the red and black have a distinction. Only the black is going to be reflecting off the black in terms of direction. How to best put that? I mean, obviously, going through something, coming out the side, if you go through it and come out the side and all sides, it's going to look like a reflection. But it'll matter to another dipole. It'll matter when there's two black things. You clearly can understand that all the force between them will be magnified in its impact, because every bit of stuff in between them won't escape. And the closer they are, the more interactions there are, and the interactions all have a bias in a direction. So you can just understand that's the mechanism for the strong repulsion, and the mechanism for the strong attraction between an electron and proton is that every swimmer this guy throws out is getting diverted. So there's no reflections, and every swimmer this guy throws at this guy gets diverted. So there's no reflections. So you can understand that all the force, all the pressure of interaction leaks out, and so there's less and less interactions, which means it's going to get pushed together by the external swimmers. All right, so that's it. That's the starting point in terms of this is all you need to know. This is it. That's all there is. Two kinds of force, two kinds of matter, two kinds of interaction. That's it. Done. The whole thing can be explained from there. And it's just my job, I guess, is to contrive a bunch of bullshit words to explain how simple that is, how it does cover it all, how it does explain gravity, how it does explain magnetism, how it does explain electricity. It's all understandable, really simple stuff, not all that complicated. And yeah, it's only in hindsight that you can say that, though. Yeah, it's really simple once you know the right answer. Once you know how to do it. It's like juggling or anything else. Once you learn how to juggle, you're saying, how can nobody know how to juggle? This is easy. So once you've practiced something and you can do it, yeah, it's like, why can't everybody do this? It's so simple. It seems much simpler once you've mastered it. But this is simple, frankly. It's just maybe nobody thought it could be this simple. I don't know. It's hard to imagine why all these people thinking about it for all this time, nobody came up with this simple answer. Because it's a simple answer and it's a complete answer. So tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where it isn't simple or complete. Not complete enough. Okay. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to explain everything about electrons. I can't tell you what shape they exactly are. I can't. All that stuff may be questions that will never be answered. But I can answer for the phenomenon and why it exists. So just explain to me how it's not simple enough or it's not complete enough compared to the existing theory. But I won't get any of it because you can't do it. It's impossible to do because this is exactly what I'm selling it as. It's a model that actually works and actually is simple and doesn't have a bunch of woo in it, a bunch of made up magical bullshit. And you're choosing the magical bullshit. And I don't have any explanation for that other than you're belligerently stupid. So, yes, that's my accusation. And I think I'm demonstrating it. You won't defend, I can't get a physicist to defend their physics, right? There's not a physicist online who takes open questions, will be subject to critique of his fundamental understanding. There's not one. There's not a single one. They're cowards. And all the dissidents are likewise cowards because they're also likewise incapable, afraid of the conversation. Quite obviously. And clearly I'm the one saying, let's have it. Let's duke it out. And there's no showers. I've offered them money. I can't get them to show. So clearly this isn't trivial because then they would just treat me like a flat earther and mock it and easily, point out easy flaws. But there aren't any easy flaws. So anyway, till the next time and such. That's all I can do. Pearls before swine. This, cliches sometimes are all there is. That's what you people is. That's the problem here. Just don't. People just aren't really looking for the right answer. They're looking for the truth. You just want your bullshit to be validated. The bullshit that you've lived by. Your theories on life. It's just politics. Anyway, till next time and such. That's enough for this video and such.